let's start with, I guess, maybe the Lamar contract. Talk a little bit about that, and then we've got the Russell Wilson contract as well, and how that could obviously influence the Lamar situation. Everyone's kind of clamoring for Lamar. I think there's every possibility that Lamar is just going to play this year. Try to get back, get right, have a full year, and then, go from there. I think he'd like to sign, but I think the Ravens are going to have to throw something crazy at him to get him to sign right now. And I think it could be, I think he'd sign at $250 million. I think he'd probably sign at $220 to $30 million, most, if not all of that guaranteed. But unfortunately, we know what the Browns did with this Deshaun Watson thing is just a complete joke, and how it's affected everything else. So we've seen the Russell Wilson contract and what that's doing, and trying to kind of regulate the market back down. What do you guys think about Lamar? What do you think about the chances of not only the Ravens signing, but what do you think he's worth? What would you pay him?
Man, that's a tough one. And let's preface this by saying that you and Mr. T-Rock over here are Ravens fans, right, and I am a Steelers fan. Jeff is a big Pete Weber bowling fan.
Loves it. I'm going to be coming with the truth. You guys still have your biases, and I'll speak the truth. Go ahead.
You have an unbiased opinion. Yeah.
You have unbiased. I do too.
Oh,
for sure.
So what do we got? What do you guys think?
Let me ask this. What do you, because they've been really pretty hush-hush about it. What do you think, just it's purely speculative, what do you think he's asking for behind closed doors?
$250 guaranteed, minimum.
He's got to be asking for Deshaun money, right?
Guaranteed.
Like
you're saying $250 guaranteed is what he's asking for behind
absolutely
closed doors.
No question.
Well, you saw the thing, I guess, where he responded to someone on Twitter, and someone had posted something, and some other guy would be like, "Well, they already offered him $250," and he chimed in like, "No, they didn't." Like, so I'm assuming. I mean, it's got to start with a 2, right? I mean, just what they have to offer him, but man, that's
see
tough.
One thing.
So I was just gonna say. So I pulled some stats. And these are going to surprise. These surprised me. So I said the whole time, like, you would never take Deshaun Watson over Lamar Jackson. I didn't think there was ever a scenario where most people would take him. But man, when you pull these stats, like Watson blows away Lamar in just about every category. Now, the only thing is Lamar's 30-8 as a starter, and 30. Yeah, well, Deshaun gets him in that too. So now Deshaun's only 28-26 as a starter.
Right.
So.
Well, that's the thing. He played for a terrible team, right? But he's also thrown to to DeAndre Hopkins for the first several years of his career. There's some things there that help to balance that out, and a team that had to throw all the time to try to stay into games.
Yeah. 4 seasons of play right now for Watson. 14,539 yards, 104 touchdowns, 36 picks. Like 1,700 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. That's insane. Yeah. He's 1-2 in the playoffs, and doesn't seem like, I don't remember many of his playoffs, but it doesn't seem like they were on him because he has a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio in the playoffs. Where Lamar's 30-8 as a starter, he's thrown for almost 9,000 yards, 84 touchdowns, 31 picks. He only played 12 games last year?
I want to say
something like about that. 12 games.
I have to go back and look at that.
Of course, rushing yards, 3,700 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns. He's got the MVP on him, but he's fumbled 37 times. And only 13 have been lost, but I was like, dang, that is a lot. 1-3 in the playoffs, 3 touchdowns, 5 picks. So, man, Deshaun put up some pretty darn good numbers. Now, I still think I would take Lamar over Deshaun, but, man, that's hard. So, it's hard to say, like, is Lamar worth Deshaun money now? Like, after looking at that, I'm like, man,
I mean, Deshaun has also thrown the ball, 400 times more than Lamar. So,
and one thing
which led to 300 plus more completions. So that's going to account for your passing yard differential. You look at like completion percentage, Deshaun still has them, but it's only by 3%, 67 to 64.
And one thing I think we can't lose sight of too is that, the idea of Deshaun money, Deshaun wasn't worth Deshaun money, right? Like he only got paid that money because he refused to go to the Browns. See, they made it very clear, like they wanted him. He said, absolutely not. There's no chance I'm going to play there. And then they made him such a ridiculous contract offer that he, of course, had to take it, because who's not going to take that type of money? But that totally reset the market. They didn't pay him that because he was just so much better than every other quarterback. They paid him that because it was the only chance they had to even do anything with the team that they've been able to build, because they thought Baker was going to turn into something that he just never turned into. And so now they were kind of at the end of the rope on what they've been able to build. They got a small window of time. So I feel like there's kind of like there are some things that have to be taken into consideration there on that Deshaun contract, where it's kind of like, yeah, just because some team was desperate enough to do a foolish deal, that doesn't mean that every single quarterback after that is entitled to that same foolish deal. And that's why Russell Wilson didn't get that.
Before the Browns jumped back in, where was Deshaun going? He was going to New Orleans. Was it New Orleans? New
Orleans was definitely one of the top 2 or 3 teams.
I'm trying to think of those.
I thought it was the Falcons.
That's right. You're right.
Why do I feel like it was the
I think
Falcons?
the Falcons had the edge.
Yeah, and he's, I believe, from Atlanta originally. So a lot of people did think that he might end up going there. But no one else was going to pay him that kind of money. Yeah. No one else was going to pay him this Cleveland money.
I wonder what the other money was that they were going to, like, other teams were going to throw out there. I don't know that.
I don't know that it ever got to that point, like, honestly. I think it's really like Cleveland just went all in, and that was kind of the extent of it. The thing that's interesting is, going back to the Lamar thing, when you were asking about what is he asking for, I could be way off on this, but I'm not sure that Lamar has asked for anything. I think there's a decent possibility that Lamar has a number in his mind. I don't know that he's told anybody. I really get the feeling that there's just been silence, and he's waiting to be wooed. He's waiting to be blown away and impressed. And that's been part of the frustration, because there were comments in the spring, at least from the team, that really were just kind of like, yeah, he's not telling us anything. Like we're trying to make some inroads, and we're just not getting any feedback from Lamar on what he's looking for. And again, we all know, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. We hear it all the time about the fact that he doesn't have an agent. And that's, we know that. That's one of the great things about having an agent, is you have somebody to kind of start those conversations somewhere. Lamar's having to do that on his own.
And leak stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Get that stuff leaked
so
out.
I just think that's, that's part of it as well, where it's challenging for the team.
Are you saying that he's just sitting back trying to hope that Baltimore, the team that drafted him at the position that they did, you're saying that he's just sitting there waiting for them to show him love? Like, you don't think that there hasn't been any discussion of anything
just
as
my
far
theory.
As money's concerned, long-term wise?
Just my theory. I think they've started the conversations with him. It's just my theory. I think they've started the conversations with him. They've thrown things out. He hasn't accepted it. But I don't know that he's come back and definitively told them, you pay me this and I will do it. Because I think that's that somehow that would have leaked.
If that's the case, and obviously you're guessing here, but if that's the case, man, I can't imagine any other scenario where that goes well for either party. I mean, if you're married and you're looking at your spouse going like, yeah, whatever you're trying to do for me that you thought was going to be good for me, that wasn't it. Well, what do you want? I don't know. You just got to figure it out. So like that's never going to end well in a relationship.
Don't disagree.
I would hope that he has a little more sense. Maybe he gave them a range. Like, I'm looking at this point to this point, like somewhere here in between. And they're, of course he's thinking higher end. So they're hitting somewhere in the middle, hoping that he takes it. And
look, yeah, it's very possible. And I think that's what makes it challenging, right? Is that like players, this is not their strong suit, right? Like handling these types of negotiations, particularly when you only get 1 or 2 of them ever in your entire career, like it's just not, it's not their strength. And so, I'm sure he's getting advice from people, even if he doesn't actually have an agent. I'm sure he's getting, some sort of advisement.
Yeah.
Well, mom.
And you know what? Honestly, I mean, there's always that side of it, right? Which is, it's easy to get information and advisement from people when it's not their money and their health on the line to say, hey man, just wait because you could make 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million more next season, right? Because we know this thing's just going to continue. Because the one thing that we haven't taken into consideration in the springtime, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert both become eligible for extensions. Clearly, they're both going to be getting some type of an extension, and it's got to be massive. Doesn't mean that it's going to be long-term right at that time, but they're both eligible at that point. And so that eligibility, that could reset the market again. So you do have that aspect of it for Lamar of like, man, I don't know. If I wait one more year, I'm making that much more money. And the big thing too is when you start looking at, for the franchise tag, if the team ends up franchising him next year and he's making the average of the top players in that position, these guys like a Russell Wilson, who I believe the first year of his contract's like $45 million or something. So that average of the top, I believe it's the top 10 at the position that they take, that average is going to really jump next year. So it's going to be interesting. I personally don't think it gets done before games start this year. I do think there's some built-in urgency after the season, before next season when it goes into the franchise tag. But again, we've seen it work well with Kirk Cousins. He betting on himself.
No, it worked well for him.
Betting on himself.
Yeah,
worked
well for him. It didn't work well.
Yeah.
I mean,
here's the thing. Is Baltimore really willing to play Russian roulette? Because that's essentially, your guys are playing the biggest game of Russian roulette with the quarterback. I think we can all agree on who's top 10. So there's going to be 22 other teams in the league that are going to want to take a huge, I wouldn't even say risk, on going after him if they have the ability to go get him. And they will give him the money. Dude, I'm here in South Florida. The tweets that I see from people when he posted that little picture of him in a Miami uniform, and people like, we got Tua Tagovailoa, however you say his name. And you sit there and you look at him versus Lamar Jackson, and if you had the choice of being able to go after one or the other.
That sounded right.
Yeah, no, pronunciation. I don't know if I got the A over the U. I'm not sure. But I'm saying,
well, look, I mean, I think it's interesting, right?
It's pretty close.
Yeah, it gets tricky because, there's also the need to field a competitive team. And, the reality is I don't know that if you sign a player to a 5-year, $250 million fully guaranteed contract, it's just going to hamper your ability to field a competitive team. And the Ravens have shown that like they have that ability to continue to draft well and build strong teams. And the thing, like the way that the Ravens are built, obviously as a running team, allow them to potentially, be successful with a lesser quarterback than what, the Packers need out of Aaron Rodgers. For an example, but it's a tough one. I mean, if I'm the Ravens, I'm at least taking phone calls. I'm going to hear what somebody's willing to offer.
You have to. I mean, you'd have to then, man, it's tough because it's like, do you think Tyler Huntley could give you half, 3/4 of Lamar's production?
Yeah.
If he can, I mean, what could you do with that extra money for the next, because Huntley's on his second year?
Yeah.
I mean, what could you build around him at that point? And then here's the other thing is, does Lamar want to be there? Because Tim, you touched on it, that Watson's thrown 400 more passes than him. Do you not think he's like, no, I can throw the ball? The Ravens aren't built around that. And then,
not necessarily built around it, but I think it's playing to Lamar's strength. So I think Lamar enjoys running. I think he loves that he can make some plays happen with his legs. And so I think he's okay with the setup he's in. It got him an MVP.
It's a good setup. I mean, honestly, it's a good setup for both. It's just whether or not you can come to an agreement that's worth it. I just have to think like the way Huntley played those last 5 games of the season. it would give me pause. Like I watched him and I was like,
where we really hurt,
man,
we got hurt on the wide receiver side because he just did not have the arm strength to get it out to our wide receivers. So tight ends, we're very happy. Running backs are very happy, but we were hurting on the tight ends on the wide receiver side. So the question is this: if you're saying the magic number is $250 million, that puts him as the third highest paid quarterback in the league. Are you saying he is worth the money to be considered the third best quarterback in the league?
I think there's a difference there because you're also going fully guaranteed on it. So that's what changes it, right? If it was strictly a matter of saying, like, let's say a traditional or even a Russell Wilson type of contract, right? Where it's $250 million, but maybe $175 million of it is guaranteed. I believe Russell Wilson's $165 million guaranteed. If it was that, I think you do that deal for Lamar. Yeah. I think the problem is the fully guaranteed portion of that. I mean, that's a quarter of $1 billion.
Usually like 50 to 60% guaranteed typically for most.
I think it's somewhere probably in that neighborhood. Yeah.
So,
so we're looking at, I mean, just with Russell's, his cap hit next year, this year is only 17 million, 22 next year, 35.4 in 2024. Then it jumps to 55.4 in 2025. So they have several years to build around that. So if they can structure Lamar's in a way, I mean, he's still going to get his money. He's still going to get paid regardless. And you're right, Ted, 164 total guarantee, 124 guaranteed at signing. It was like a 50 million signing bonus. So if you can structure it some way like that, I mean, do we just throw the Deshaun thing out and just be like, this is an outlier?
Well, that's what the Ravens want to do.
Nobody else is going to do this.
That's what the Ravens certainly are trying to do.
I'm sure
I think that's where the battle is.
And
I think the upside is the more deals that get signed, like a Russell Wilson, there's more of the case that just is a weird outlier and that, that's not going to happen. Because the reality is, if you clear the decks on everything else and you just look statistically, and I'm not a Russell Wilson fan by any stretch of the imagination, but if you just look statistically at what Russell Wilson has accomplished, if anyone could have made the argument to have gotten a lot of guaranteed money and to make a ton of money, it's Russell Wilson. I mean, the guy's had his Super Bowl appearances. He's won his ring. He's put up amazing numbers. He's done everything you'd want out of your quarterback. And, as much as I'm not a fan, he's done it largely the right way. And he didn't get it. So it's kind of like, man, if he's not getting that type of thing, then I think, you start to see the argument fade away a little bit and really start to make it seem that much more that the Deshaun situation's an outlier.
Do you think Russell did a disservice to all the other quarterbacks out there?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, it's hard to say a disservice when you're getting 164 million in total guarantees.
Some people feel that way.
I mean, he had Denver over a barrel too. I mean, you gave up all those draft picks. You gave up your best tight end. You gave up, not so good quarterback, but he really could have hammered him. So I don't know. Maybe that was part of the deal beforehand. Like, hey, look, this is what we're gonna offer you, or this is what we're gonna sign
prior to the trade. You're saying
if we trade for you, yeah. That had to have been. I mean, because otherwise he could have pushed for that, and like you said, probably would have deserved it. 37,000 passing yards, 229 touchdowns, 87 picks for his career. I mean, and he's durable. Like he's played every game since 2012 except for last year. I think he missed 4 games. So I mean,
that's going to come with age. So does he go? Russell's what, 34?
He'll be 34.
So I mean, I think this is about the time where things start. Players start struggling a little bit.
It's interesting though. I mean, if you think about that, because I agree with you. Historically speaking, that's the case. But man, if you look at the modern quarterbacks now. And it's so interesting, and I didn't have time to do this before the show today. Maybe it's something we can talk about, for our next show. But the average, the retirement ages of quarterbacks over the year. When you look back at a Johnny Unitas, a Ken Stabler, a Namath, a Montana, and then you start moving into Brett Favre. These guys, man, it used to be 36, 38. You were considered like an old man at quarterback.
Oh yeah,
and now you've got guys like your Aaron Rodgers. Forget about Brady, right? But even your Aaron Rodgers of the world and these guys, and they don't show much sign of slowing down. They're the durability is there. We have so many advancements now between diet and, just the nutritional side, the physical, the working outside, the overall health. I just think we're going to see, 40 is no longer even going to be that big of a deal unless a player really, really plays an extremely physical nature of football at the quarterback position or freak injuries. But outside of that, man, I just think 40 is just going to be 35 now, and maybe even less than that. So, it's not necessarily a bad deal on the Denver side, for what they did, based on age and everything. I don't think that makes it, a big deal. But it's going to be interesting to see where it, plays out.
So you're not surprised. So you would say, I'm not surprised if you look at the top 12 highest paid quarterbacks in the league. You would say, I'm not surprised that half of them are over 30 in that regard. And several of them obviously have like Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan. I mean, that's 39 and 37.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're getting up there. Obviously, they're at they're at like 8 and 9, I think, with what they're getting paid. But still, Matt Ryan's not producing.
No. And that's the thing, right? So he's going to be an interesting one to see what he can do on that Colts team. But I think the reality is it's really, no, I'm not surprised. Particularly because, teams now are starting to build and stack their teams at younger positions and be ready to go all in on that quarterback, and that's really what it comes down to. So, you're going to have some like the Patrick Mahomes of the world where the Chiefs are going to sign him to a 10-year deal and, and just never have to worry about it again. But outside of that, I'm not surprised that teams are paying if they feel like that's their missing piece, right? Like if you have everything else in place, man, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, and this is going to be one of the interesting things looking at the Chargers. Man, the Chargers could be good, right? The Chargers have a ton starting to line up for them, and that could be a really, 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 really good situation for them. Now they got to pay Herbert soon. Bengals have to pay, Burrow soon, but they, there's a lot that they could get done in the meantime.
Man, you get it while you can, man. That's I think we've talked about that. Is there a new dichotomy in the NFL? Like, you're going to see, draft picks. You got Los Angeles, you got the Rams who treat them like they're garbage and trade them for players. Are you going to see that with like quarterbacks? Like, at some point, does it calm down? Are you trying to then like, all right, well, we're going to get 5-6 years out of this guy, and then we're going to trade him off, and then we're going to build again. It's tough to do, but quarterbacks are getting, to me, that seems like they're getting better. Like, I don't know. Like, there's not too many teams that you're like, oh my goodness, like their quarterback position is terrible. So it's going to be interesting. Do you think Patrick Mahomes regrets signing that 10-year deal?
I'll tell you who I think of is Josh Allen. I mean, it's the same type of thing. It's like, man, like, what was my hurry?
Well, we're really just talking about the top 5 quarterbacks, though. I mean, in the league. So
that's true too.
Your top 5 quarterbacks are all over, $200,000 or $200 million. So outside of Deshaun Watson, 200, whatever was it, 230?
230, yeah.
230. The next one is Dak Prescott at 160. And then Matthew Stafford at 160, and then Aaron Rodgers at 150. And so it drops pretty significantly out of those top 5. So back to Lamar, are we going, okay, yeah, Lamar, you belong in that upper echelon, top 5 quarterbacks in the league, making over $200 million. Now, obviously, we could argue that,
all right,
maybe Kyler deserves it. I don't know. Did they feel like they?
No, just the opposite. Like, I think Kyler, like, is what has he done besides like? There he is. What has he done
Kyler has no
outside of like? Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't.
You don't have stats or
all, but
nope.
And see, but that's what also hurts. That hurts the Ravens. Like,
yeah, because if you're going to pay someone like Kyler, who they're arguing like, no. Kyler, Russell, Deshaun, they're very similar players, is the argument, but yet Lamar's, has the winning record.
So your top five right now.
Patrick Mahomes
is who? MVP.
So you're talking about top 5 contracts right now. Yeah. So Patrick Mahomes, $450 million, which is astronomical.
Okay.
Josh Allen.
He has an MVP.
Josh Allen, $258.
258 over how many years? Do we know? Was it
I don't
7
have
and
that.
258?
I think it was a 7. I feel like it was 7, but I could be.
I don't have that, but it's 258. But he only had 150 total guaranteed. Only 100 million of that was fully guaranteed, which is why this whole Deshaun Watson thing is just so much just crazier than we would ever hope. So Patrick Mahomes number 1, Josh Allen number 2 at 258, Russell Wilson number 3 at 245, and then Kyler Murray at 230, and Deshaun Watson. So 230 million, 500,000. So he has Deshaun Watson by $500,000.
It is a 6-year deal for Josh Allen.
For Josh Allen. So would you give us 5 or was that 6?
That's 5.
It's 5. So 2 of the 5 are MVPs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But those two also won.
Also
won Super Bowls, and both had been to multiple Super Bowls. So
they did, but the other guys haven't been there. So now you've got Lamar has to slide somewhere, and he can't be 1. But is he 3? Yeah. I mean, he's got the MVP to boot it. I mean, you can't discount it. Well, however you feel about that MVP, you can't discount that. So
I mean, I would definitely put him over Kyler. If we can get him between Kyler and Russell, I think that'd be a good spot. Like between 230 and 245, I think I'm okay with that.
And you go fully guaranteed on that?
I mean, I don't know if you go fully guaranteed. I think even if you're able to hit that, looking at some of these numbers, you're looking at somewhere between 50 and 70% fully guaranteed. I think if you can get somewhere around 70% of that fully guaranteed, I mean, that's a pretty good deal. If this whole Deshaun Watson thing hadn't happened, you're taking that every single
100%.
day. If I'm going, I'm saying you're giving 240 at 70% of that's guaranteed. Where do I sign?
I could totally see 230 and like 185 guaranteed. But I just don't know that that's going to get the job done. Not at this point. Not at this point.
Man.
It should in a perfect world, but now there's been some major complications.
Well, and this is where I think you have the Patriots were good for so long because Tom Brady was able to take less, was willing to take less. Now, of course, he's married. He married well financially. So, but regardless, he was able to because he still could have demanded more if he wanted to. Doesn't matter who's married to, he still could have demanded to be the best or top paid quarterback in the league, and they would have given it to him.
And he should have been. I mean, in all honesty, like love him or hate him. I mean, I hate him.
Sure,
he should have been. I mean, he should have been. But he knew he needed to take less for them to build a team around him. He knew. I mean, and
now we're all hoping he had retired when he had stayed retired.